everybody. All right, good morning. Everyone all set? You're like, yes, I've been waiting. Thanks for your patience. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming this morning. It's good to see you all. As you know, this is our regular monthly briefing to give members of the media and the public a sense of what's upcoming here at City Hall, to share some information on what we've been working on lately, and then, of course, answer questions that you may have. I want to give you some progress updates today and a preview of what the next month has, specifically on two of our priority areas, homelessness and public safety. With me today to provide additional insight and help answer any questions that you may have, Hafsa Keika, who is our Director of Homeless Strategies and Solutions. Assistant Police Chief Tom Underwood is with us, as well as the Director of Environmental Services, Renee Robertson. So let's just jump right into homelessness. Since taking office in December of 2020, I've been focused on building out a homelessness response system, which had been lacking in prior administrations. I'm pleased that we've been able to make progress on two key tenets of that particular response system, expanding our shelter capacity and working to convince people to come off the streets. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. Early in my term, we launched and expanded our non-law enforcement-based coordinated street outreach team, which offers shelter to people experiencing homelessness and connections to supportive services. We launched a new outreach program with a new homeless service provider named CityNet to reach folks living along our state highways and to connect them with shelter and with services. I would note that this program has been one of statewide significance in that other cities are replicating what we're doing here in San Diego. Now, as a result of these efforts, our shelter capacity is regularly north of 90% full. A lot of folks choosing to come off the streets. And to date, we have been able to expand our shelter bed capacity by more than 21%. That's an increase in the availability of beds, along with greater utilization of those beds. We're also adding different types of shelter to address particular needs within our unsheltered population, not just for women and families, but also folks with behavioral health issues, with substance use disorder, and with acute medical needs. Some of you were with me when we opened the Seahart Shelter in the Midway community this past winter that is specific to folks with behavioral health issues, and we have more beds coming online soon. Let me detail a couple of those. Next month, we'll be opening 40-bed women's shelter in downtown San Diego in partnership with Catholic Charities. This summer, we'll build on the program from Seahart by adding a new 22-bed Seahart Safe Haven facility. We're in contract negotiations over that proposal right now, and I'll update you as soon as we're able to do so. As has been reported, we are working with the County of San Diego and the Lucky Duck Foundation to open a new homelessness shelter in Midway that will provide between 125 and 150 additional shelter beds. For those of you that want details, the city will handle the operations and maintenance of that shelter, and the county will provide behavioral health care. We're also looking to open 84 beds at our Palm Avenue facility while we finalize our long-term plan for that particular property. It will be used for the SMART program at that site, but in the meantime, we want to make good use of that property. This will allow for the immediate use of the facility and match people in a non-congregate shelter capacity. Our goal is to take people who are in our current shelters, who have an identified permanent housing solution, but that is some time away. We want to transition those folks into Palm Avenue in order to free up the shelter bed and give them that bridge that they need to get before they can get stably housed. This is a gap in our system that Hafsa and her team helped identify, along with a viable solution that will be in place soon. Finally, Hafsa and her team are working on two additional properties that will bring, we estimate, another 185 beds online before the end of the summer. So we're looking for every single opportunity to get folks off the streets. That is, of course, our immediate goal. I think that's San Diegans' immediate goal. All told, we're anticipating adding more than 450 beds to our shelter capacity before the end of the calendar year. Now, I want to be clear. Our shelters are a critical part of our homelessness response system, but they're not intended to be the end point of the process. They are meant to provide safety and from the dangers of the street, as well as act as a pathway to services and to permanent housing and get folks off the streets for good. As you all should know, I want you all to know that our shelters are working. They're connecting folks who avail themselves of the shelter to longer-term and permanent housing solutions. Since the start of this year, we have connected 288 people directly from our shelters and into housing. Since July 1st of last year, that number is 588. And so this is progress, but of course it's not enough. That's why on Monday I flew to Sacramento to join my colleagues in the bipartisan Big City Mayors Coalition to urge our state leaders to continue funding the Homelessness Housing Assistance Program, known as HAP. These are the dollars that we've been able to use to fund many of the things I just told you about, specifically about 1,000 more shelter beds. We've also used these dollars to do things like establish safe parking sites, accompanied with the additional social services and housing navigation for those folks living in cars. We've been able to create safe storage facilities, established a family reunification program, used those dollars to support rapid rehousing, person-centered street outreach, criminal justice diversion, and more. HAP is absolutely critical to our efforts, and we're asking the state to continue this successful program with funding of $1 billion a year for the next 3 years. This is really a powerful tool, and I can't say enough how much it has been helpful to these efforts I just outlined to you. We need Governor Newsom and their state legislators to continue this program. I am optimistic that they will do that, but I appreciate the chance to underline for all of you this morning why it's so important. I'm also grateful to Hassa and her team for all their efforts to innovate and diversify our shelters so that they're suitable for a lot more people who need them and who, if they're not in shelters, would otherwise be on our streets. I know that the public is rightfully frustrated about our situation on the streets, and I am too. And I'm wholly committed to doing everything possible to get folks off the streets. I and this city are all hands on deck, no stone unturned, and every option on the table. And so in addition to what we're doing, I'm open to any and all feasible solutions to address this. I acknowledge we have to do more, but one of our central challenges is space. And so I'd put the call out today to anyone who has available land and wants to help. If you have feasible locations or a feasible ready-to-go concept to help get folks off the streets, I'm all ears. My door is open. In addition to our shelter system, the city is working to secure non-congregate options for people experiencing homelessness. On Monday, some of you have already reported, the Housing Commission gave the city and the county the go-ahead to send a joint application for state Project Home Key funds to build new permanent supportive housing project that will house 40 chronically homeless individuals. On Tuesday, the County Board of Supervisors, under the leadership of Chair Nathan Fletcher, voted to commit roughly $11 million to help fund this project. The application deadline for this is May the 2nd, and we'll be submitting that application before that deadline. Now, more homes, of course, is our ultimate goal, and we're working with the private sector to build more permanent supportive apartments as quickly as we can. For example, the Bridge to Home program that we announced earlier this year will provide 662 new affordable apartments, 193 of which are permanent supportive homes for people experiencing chronic homelessness. As we work to create more homes, we have to encourage our unsheltered neighbors to get off the streets and accept shelter and services, and that's what our coordinated outreach team is all about. I'd note that earlier this week the City Council approved, as Mr. Garrick knows, 2 projects that are part of the Bridge to Home program. So we're taking that concept and implementing it. Hope to have shovels in the ground very soon. So that's homelessness. Let me move along to our second subject this morning. It's another item of extreme importance to San Diegans. It's rising crime and our police staffing levels. And so I want to give you an update on what we're doing on that front, as well as some upcoming efforts that you should be aware of. As many of you will recall, SDPD went through a very difficult time in terms of staffing over the last decade, with severe staffing challenges, particularly between the years 2012 and 2018. In 2018, the city undertook a concerted recruitment push, and the number of officers have been far higher than during those challenging years that I just referenced. In fact, SDPD currently has 1,889 officers, which is better than 8 of the last 9 years. That said, staffing levels are lower than we'd like them to be, and we've got to do something about that. I want to flag for all of you that we have a lot of officers who are currently in the Deferred Retirement Option Program, DROP. A lot of those officers are in DROP right now, which means that we're going to see a lot of retirements over the next several years, because when officers enter DROP, they have a maximum of 5 years before they have to retire. The mission is very simple. We have to retain as many of our good officers as possible, as well as continuing to push on recruitment. Next month, I hope to bring forth a suite of programs to help with recruitment and with retention in partnership with Chief Nislight. This will include a lateral incentive program to attract personnel from other agencies, as well as a hiring incentive to get more folks to join this profession and to serve this great city. In my proposed budget, we have fully funded our public safety departments, lifeguards, firefighters, police officers. This includes planning for pay increases in contracts that are being negotiated with our recognized employee organizations right now. The City Council will be reviewing my proposed budget starting next week. Our police academies, I'm happy to report, have been full, and they've been the most diverse in our city's history, both in race and in gender, which means that our police department will better reflect the population that we're honored to serve. And finally, on public safety, I'll give a quick update on our privacy ordinance. I look forward to bringing this proposed ordinance to the City Council for a second reading as soon as budget reviews are concluded. This effort is central to our focus in bringing technology to help solve crimes and to keep communities safe while maintaining individual privacy rights of San Diegans. I intend to have this ordinance adopted and these crime-fighting technologies, like our smart streetlights, in operation this summer. I think it's critical to making sure that we address any sort of summer surge in violent activity, and that's why that timeline is really critical. We're concluding negotiations with our recognized employee groups. I hope to have that done like yesterday, and as soon as we do, we'll be before the City Council and hopefully, again, have some of this crime-fighting technology back up in operation. As you may know, the previous administration ceased its operation a number of years ago. With that, I believe that's all the updates I wanted to give you this morning. Thank you for lending me your ear, and with that, I'm happy to answer any questions folks may have. Mr. Brown.
It's been a couple weeks now since you put on hold all of the advisory documents in the city pending a public outreach campaign.
Yeah.
We haven't heard anything about what that's going to look like, when it'll start, how long it'll last. Can you give us some details about that, and how will you ensure that it doesn't delay what is already a very slow rollout of safe bike infrastructure, keeping in mind that 2021 saw more traffic deaths than any year since the city adopted Vision Zero?
Sure. Well, I appreciate the question about ABLs and their rollout, and I appreciate the characterization as slow. They're certainly reporting. I'm not sure which one of you did it, but it was referencing it's going too fast. Is that you, Garrett? Point is, it's subjective, but you know where my bread is buttered. I believe that our future necessitates us having more modes of transportation that are all safe: walking, biking, mass transit, and your car. In the case of the assisted bike lanes, we made a mistake, no question about it, and you've seen me take responsibility for that and act swiftly to correct it. On a go-forward basis, the city, in concert with the community, have identified a multitude of locations where we believe these and other bike treatments would be good. And unlike what happened in Mira Mesa, we're going to go to the community planning group, to the town council, and explain to them that this is coming, to assist them in understanding what it is and hopefully get their support. As you know, sometimes we don't get that support, and we may move forward still. We did that on 30th Street. In other cases, we may have better ideas that come from that. I experienced that as a city council member when there was proposals to make a dedicated busway on Park Boulevard, and that process was actually enhanced by community input. That's what sort of is informing what I want to do. What you're going to see is transportation staff going to community planning groups. We had folks have a conversation in Pacific Beach, I believe it was last week, to discuss slow streets there and kind of what is possible. But I definitely have asked staff to be much more thoughtful, intentional in going to these community groups, not as a process of delaying the matter, but about being transparent, so that folks know what's happening in their community before it happens. What happened in Gold Coast shouldn't have happened. It won't happen in the future. We've already made adjustments in the transportation department to make sure that that's the case. Of course.
So, one quick correction. The North Park Planning Committee endorsed the 30th Street bike lane. So there was always opposition, there always will be, but the community planning group actually said yes to that. There's never been community planning or community outreach for crosswalks, for traffic signal modifications, for, all sorts of transportation projects. Even Class 2 painted bike lanes never really got, a community planning group hearing. So what is the standard for when that outreach is necessary and when it's not?
Well, a couple things. I think assisted bike lanes are wholly new. I don't think I know that's true. You ain't never seen one before, Gold Coast, right? And I think it's common sense that if you're going to do something different, you should explain it to people. It's not about having veto power, but it's about simply saying, hey, we're going to do this. What you saw were people who were confused on how to deal with that. That's not good for anybody. And that could have been easily solved with some courtesy notifications and some community education. We didn't do that. So I think to answer your question, if it's something that's wholly new to our community, we probably should explain it to people before we deploy it. So I think that's one thing. I think second thing is that much of what we're proposing has long ago been ratified. It's part of a mobility plan that may have been adopted ages ago, a bicycle master plan that was adopted a decade ago, a climate action plan that we're currently updating for its second version. A lot of these projects are in public documents. They've been a part of public hearings. They've been a part of public votes. I recognize San Diego's got a lot on their minds. They're raising families. They're going to jobs. They're doing 100 million other things, and they may not be aware. Maybe they came into the community after this public hearing was had. So I do think that it is not hard for us to go out and explain to people, hey, this master plan that we adopted 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, we're prepared to implement. And a part of why this friction is happening, maybe some of this drama, if you will, is that we are looking to expedite this process. Right? We're saying we want to ramp up road repairs. There's too many damn potholes in this town. We got to fix them. But an efficient use of taxpayer dollars is that when we're repaving those roads, that we install some of these bike facilities. And to do those in tandem means that some of this stuff will speed up. But again, we know when those contracts are going. We just let out a whole bunch of road repair contracts just a few days ago. We got a lot of road repair coming. If that happens to be on a road that's slated for a whatever level bike lane or an assisted bike lane or something that is new or different to the community, we need to do a check-in with the community. We need to explain it to them. We need to be transparent. And, if folks, object and their objections, I think, have issues around public safety, like what we saw in Gold Coast, we need to course correct. If their objections are a reflexive opposition to change, that's probably not going to get a positive hearing here because we do need to make some changes. Our climate is changing, our affordability, inflation, other issues are causing us to change and try and give people more options. It's necessary for both the economic vitality of the city as well as our climate action plans. Sure.
That, this is playing out right now on Park Boulevard, so that you put money in your budget for protected bike lanes on Park Boulevard. I wrote a story about it. I haven't heard any real official announcement from the city. There's already a petition, claiming that the city didn't do any public outreach on this. What's happening with that? Are we going to see, what type of outreach are we going to see on that project?
So I don't have a specific answer for you on that. Again, some of those facilities that are currently on Park Boulevard, I was an integral part of when I was on the city council. I remember claims of death and destruction that will come if that dedicated busway was installed. I don't believe that's come to pass. I think Park Boulevard's gotten more dynamic, more exciting. There's more opportunity and vitality on that street, and I believe more will come. So change will come to Park Boulevard. We have a paving contract that's gone out there. This is, as I just mentioned, an opportunity for us to make some adjustments. City staff is doing that, and we have to make some adjustments. Here's the other piece of this. A lot of these community groups, have struggled during the pandemic. I would argue that makes it easier for us to zoom in and explain to them what's going on. Some people have different opinions on that. Point is, letting folks know here's what's coming. That's a critical part of a connected bike network. We've dedicated 2 Sandag projects in the area recently. We're currently pursuing funding for more in Central Hillcrest. We got more coming. And I had a gentleman stop me on the street the other day. He was very raw about a bike lane. He doesn't, the old adage of, well, no one rides on this thing. Well, a couple bikes passed us while we were standing there, but that's okay. It's not connected. We're doing it in segments. We have to connect these networks. I think Park Boulevard's a pretty critical part of that. When you see some of what we've been able to do on University, 4th and 5th, what's coming or what has happened on Georgia, on Meade, what's coming on Landis and other streets in the area, 30th, we have a lot going on. We need to connect these things. It's coming, and it will be coming to Park Boulevard soon. And again, you made mention of the fact that it's slow. I read some reporting that suggests that people think it's too fast. I'm trying to be Goldilocks and just get it done. Who else?
Mayor, 2 quick questions. So the I know that there's this effort to get people off the streets, and you are seeing that people are taking advantage of this bed space. As your teams are out there, what are they seeing in terms of the change? What is causing people to want to take advantage of this help now?
Well, I may ask Hafsa to do some cleanup on what I may share, but my initial observation would be that there's more beds available. Right, it's a game of probability. Right, is there a bed available when someone raises their hand to say they want help? I've made it very clear to all of our departments. If we have someone raising their hand, our goal and objective ought to be that there's a bed available. And certainly the number of beds that we've been able to add to our inventory in the last year makes that more likely. That's one. I think a second piece of this is the diversity of offerings that we have. You've heard mention of the fact that we're trying to focus on specific populations: women, children, people with mental illness, substance abuse. They're not always a good fit in every setting, and so it's much more of a more diverse set of offerings that makes these placements more successful. I think those are some general observation, and we have more work to do there. I don't know, Hafsa, if you have something you want to add.
Yeah, absolutely, Mayor. Piggybacking off of what the mayor said, I think a perfect example of the diversity is the Sea Heart shelter that he gave an example. That was a collaborative between the city, the county, and several different providers that really hones in, focused, and targeted care for people experiencing homelessness, like behavioral health, substance abuse, and mental health. So by diversifying our pool with the new Homeless Strategies and Solutions Department and bringing more folks in, we're able to really reach everyone as possible.
Two other, yeah. I'm sorry, we're running short of time.
I was just
Remember.
going to ask 3 questions that were technical.
Oh, of course. Let me just, if I can just follow up with 2 more quick things. I would say other things, just sort of knock down some myths, some changes that we've made. You hear a mention of, I can't bring my pet. Well, we're working with our providers to understand, short of a boa constrictor, we're going to take that in. My partner or my spouse, trying to remove some of those barriers to bring the barrier down to get, again, more people in the door. And then that connected street outreach, right? When some of Renee's folks are out doing sanitation efforts, having social workers with them, having PD matched with either the HOT team, which they've done great for a very, very long time, or some of our PATH folks, people who are trained to get folks to yes. I think these are also critical for getting people off the streets. Sorry, you had a follow-up.
So, second question. Earlier this week, we were in OB where 5 palm trees were cut. We were talking to residents out there. The city's saying they were cut because of safety concerns raised by the FAA and the airport. These neighbors now are asking, what does this look like now in the future? Will more trees be cut down? What's the plan?
Well, everything you said is accurate. The city was informed by the FAA and the airport authority that these trees need to go. We'd been in regular communication over a period of time trying to verify, is that really necessary? I think the initial number, help me out, was significantly more. Where we got to the 5 that we're at. You're asking about what's going forward. Trees grow. Right, it's the height of the tree that's the issue, and so we anticipate these trees will continue to grow, and we're going to monitor it closely, and we will stay in compliance with our federal partners who do this. I mean, safety is a top concern. The good order and operation of our airport is critical to everyone, and so. As we receive requests, we'll look at them closely. We'll ask questions of folks, but once it's made clear to us that this is what they expect of us to do, if they're in the public right of way, we'll take that action. And so I would say stay tuned. A reminder that is our intent and our hope and expectation that we replace those trees. We've made those offers, and we hope folks will take us up on those. Having a robust tree canopy for the city is a critical part of our climate action plan, and so I want to see this as an opportunity to actually make progress on that issue.
Okay, question
Rachel.
from Lisa Halberstadt.
Yeah.
First is, does the mayor expect to sign the no-fault eviction moratorium pushed by Council President Kilo Rivera? If so, when?
I've already signed it.
Friday?
Was that Friday? I don't know. It's a day that ends in Y. I was wearing a tie. Yeah.
I was wondering when it's going to go into effect. That's why your question about whether you and when.
I've already. So the question for those who can't hear was about the eviction moratorium. I signed that ordinance on Friday.
Second question was, why was the decision made to use the SMART facility for people already in shelters rather than individuals or families now living on the street or in vehicles who want shelter but are uncomfortable with concrete options?
Well, I would say it's a gap in our current system, but Hafsa, do you want to try and?
100%. Can you repeat that question?
So why are we using the SMART facility for people who've been matched with housing rather than giving it to
Correct. Well, it takes time to work with contracts and negotiation, and there's a whole process to do that. The SMART facility is going to be a really comprehensive, innovative program that we're very excited for. But in the meantime, as we're working with all the partners, we want to make sure that we're not letting beds sit still and that we're using every single capacity that we have. So we have an interim plan until we're able to go live for that plan.
Question from Jen Gangrove from UT. With 5 teams still in play for the sports arena, who's going to fund the ballot campaign because of the high cost of it? I'm hearing that none of the teams are going to pony up.
Okay, the questions about the sports arena and a potential ballot measure. I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. The city council has to take action on the due process, or the due diligence, I should say, of the proposals that we have. That process will play out. Whether or not we put a ballot measure on the ballot this year is not a decision that has been made yet, and we'll see what comes of it. At the end of the day, change is coming to sports arena. It's necessary, not just because we need a new arena. That's nice. The must-have is the additional housing that's there. We're not going to be able to make meaningful change on the homelessness crisis that we're talking about, or the affordability crisis we're talking about, without the potential for thousands of homes there. With regard to who's going to fund a campaign, I think I heard some of those concerns the last time, and it got sorted out. I suspect that same thing will happen, because whether it's one team, one group, 5 groups, or the 1.4 million people who live here. While there may be disagreements about heights and shadows and things of that nature, I don't know anyone that thinks that the status quo in the Midway community is sufficient. And I suspect whenever we go to the ballot, there will be adequate support to have a robust campaign, and ultimately to once again win the support of San Diegans, just like we did in 2020.
Follow up on that. So one of the 2 teams that your staff was recommending be taken off the short list was the one that had the most housing overall, so including market rate housing and subsidized affordable housing. And I'm wondering, is that something that you feel should factor into the scoring of each project, or are your hands tied by the Surplus Lands Act, and the state is basically telling you can only look at how much low-income affordable housing is part of this project, and that's the only criteria that you can score?
Option B, the state. And we have been in close communication with the state of California's HCD. And I will tell you that, after a stumble by the previous administration that rendered the previous efforts ineffective, and causing us to have to restart the process, we have not repeated that mistake. We've been in regular communication with HCD to make sure that we're in alignment with their needs. And what we've received is nothing but favorable feedback. They're very excited about what we're doing here. They believe that, on our current trajectory, we could be a best case example of how the Surplus Land Act should work now. And my aim is to stay on that track, to deliver a project that the state can support. Ultimately, they do have a lot of control in the situation. So the answer to your question is the second part.
What's your opinion? Do you think that more market rate housing should count in favor of a project, even if it doesn't have as much subsidized affordable housing?
Well, what I think is what I know as a former state legislator when I voted to support this bill, which the intent was around affordable housing. And if the legislature wants to change that or provide different direction to HCD, then we'll adjust accordingly. But right now, the rules as they are is around affordable, subsidized housing. But ultimately, we sports arena provides a major opportunity to create a tremendous amount of housing. There are a lot of other properties around town that we can do that. So it's not that the whole of our housing crisis has to be solved in the Midway community. Quite the contrary. Every neighborhood has to do their part. But whether it's that property, Navwar, the state properties just a few blocks from here, this property, I see a lot of opportunity to use the Surplus Land Act to our benefit and to the benefit of a lot of San Diegans who probably struggle to see a future for themselves in this city. I think transformational change on all these properties sends a strong signal to them that we're going to fight like hell to make sure they have a place to live here in San Diego at a price that they can afford. We're at time. Speaking of, I get to do some more of that work right now. Thank you all so much for being here. Again, we'll look forward to seeing you all next month. Thank you for your questions, and thanks for the opportunity to update you on homelessness and public safety, 2 of our top priorities. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Appreciate you being here.
I'm right here.